my name is Jamie and I've been learning Korean for a little over 2 years now. I usually post on TikTok, but I thought I would start using this platform to make longer videos about my experience in learning Korean and share tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way that have made learning Korean a little bit more fun or easier, and also just track my progress because honestly, I have a long way to go still before I'm fluent. And yeah, so I thought I would make my first YouTube video on 5 things I did to go from a beginner level to an intermediate level. So yeah, here we go. Number 1. All right, number 1 is learn Hangu. So Hangu is the Korean alphabet, and when I first started learning Korean, I was kind of tempted to just learn the romanization because I looked at the letters and I was like, I can't do this. But then I did some research and realized it's not as scary as it looks, and I ended up using a combination of YouTube videos and apps on my phone like Duolingo to help me memorize the Korean alphabet within a day. I literally just sat on my desk for like hours, maybe like 6 or 7 hours. I was crazy back then. And yeah, I just learned Korean, like the Korean alphabet, in a day. So it's possible, you can do it, and that just sets up a foundation that romanization of Korean could never get you to. So yeah, learn Hangu. Number 2 is I picked a curriculum. So after I learned Hangu, I immediately picked a curriculum that I loved. I chose Talk to Me in Korean. I love their books, but there are so many awesome books out there that you can use. But finding a curriculum gives you structure and a path of where you should be going with learning grammar and vocabulary. And if I didn't pick a curriculum like Talk to Me in Korean, I would be pretty lost in how I should be studying Korean in general. So yeah, pick a curriculum. The third thing I did to go from a beginner level to an intermediate level is I constantly had conversations by myself in my car. And I know that sounds crazy, but it honestly was super helpful. So I didn't have anybody to speak with at the time in Korean, and also my Korean was non-existent almost. I only used some words or phrases here and there, but whatever I could pick up, I would try to turn into sentences or into like little conversations. And as I was driving to work or from work, I would just have these like made up conversations in my car where I was like physically speaking out loud, and I was trying to practice my pronunciation and like how I would respond if like somebody were to ask me a question or something. And I know it sounds awkward and kind of crazy, and people probably think I am on the phone, like on a Bluetooth or something, when they're driving past me. But honestly, doing things like that really pushed me faster into getting to an intermediate level, especially if you don't have somebody to talk to, or if you're not lucky enough to live in that country to be immersed in, you know, the language and the culture. Talk to yourself if you have nobody else. So yeah. So the 4th thing I did was I talked to native speakers. I downloaded 2 apps, HelloTalk and Tandem, and both of those apps pair you with pen pals that speak your target language. And yeah, I met so many people through those 2 apps. And at first when I downloaded the app, I really didn't know a lot of Korean, and sometimes I was just saying 안녕하세요, something like this, or like, you know, just really basic stuff like how old I was. But then over time, I would see what they were typing to me in Korean, and sometimes I would request, I'd be like, can you talk to me in Korean? And I would just translate it, and then I would answer back in English because my vocabulary and grammar wasn't at a high enough level. And so I would ask them to talk to me in Korean, and I would have to translate it, of course, but them talking to me in Korean gave me so much insight into like the basics of Korean structure, and also like natural phrases and slang as well. So talking to native speakers, even when you're not at the level that you should be to have like an in-person conversation, is super, super helpful, and it definitely pushed me to get to an intermediate level a little bit faster. Number 5 is I expose myself to Korean every single day. I have major ADHD, so keeping focused on something every day is almost impossible for me. So I did not study every single day. I studied probably 85% of the last 2.5 years. But the other 15% that I didn't feel like studying, or my life or just anything kind of got in the way of me studying, I would expose myself to Korean on those days. So I would either watch a K-drama or listen to Korean music or listen to a podcast or have a conversation by myself in my car or talk to somebody on an app, or now I talk to my fiance. So yeah, anytime I didn't feel like studying, I still exposed myself to Korean, and that kept me consistent and kept me motivated. And so I didn't say to myself, oh, I missed a day of studying, now it looks like I'll never learn Korean. If I just said, oh, I exposed myself to Korean today, I'm still on the right track, it pushed me to keep going, and yeah, it helped me get to an intermediate level. If you somehow came across this video and something I said was helpful for you, I would love it if you were to subscribe. I have 0 subscribers right now. I'm gonna be posting at least once or twice a week, tracking my own progress and also sharing some tips and tricks. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. See ya.